we don't think they should have beaten. So why not us? If I'm Dan Quinn, that's what I'm preaching in the locker room right now. I'm saying, why not us? Pop, what's going on, man?
How you doing?
Back, man.
We are back.
Fired up to get into it. It is Monday morning, guys. Usually you get a little bit of post game this time of the week, but today is a special day. It's the Commanders finally little Monday Night Football action, Week 3, Cincinnati. So today, you already know what we're getting into. We got a Monday Night Bada Bets special for you, as well as we're going to do all our classic pregame good stuff for the Commanders, breaking down that Commanders game. Pop, how fired up are you for the Commanders on prime time?
I'm fired up. It's going to be fun. Yeah, and we're recording this on Sunday night, so we'll react a bit to the Sunday games. We want to dive right into the Commanders first, and then we won't post game right after the game. Honestly, we're working folks a little bit too late for us, but we'll be back on Thursday, and we'll do a bit of we'll be on to Arizona already, if you can believe it. Yeah, we'll also do a bit of a react to the game. Hopefully we'll be happy.
Tell you what, if the Commanders win by 20 or more, I say we get on and do it.
I don't think I'm getting on.
Yeah,
I got a 5:30 wake up call the next morning. So
that's why I don't think we're getting on. That's why I suggested that.
Yeah.
Set the vibes. Yeah. I mean, who knows, right? Any given Sunday, it's the NFL. You saw the Panthers went out and balled today. Yeah. We're going to get into more of the best Sunday games later on in the podcast. But without further ado, let's get into it, man. Guys, if you're here, you probably already know, but Commanders at Bengals, Monday Night Football, 8:15 p.m. on ESPN Plus. Pop, you going to tune into the Manning cast, or are you going to watch the...
Nah.
Yeah, we're not big Manning cast guys over here. No disrespect to one of the GOATs, but we stick to the...
I mean, my favorite way to watch the game is... I'd have to say it, it's no offense to anybody. I know you got a little offended last time I say it, but it's like alone. I just want to be... I'm just so
like a
nervous and into it, and I just...
Yeah.
Don't want a lot of chit chat. I just want to be into the game. And it's fun to watch with friends and family sometimes too. But for the most part, I like to just lock into the game. And I don't know that, I'll hear the announcers a little bit, but for the most part, I'm just kind of locked in. And I'll say this, I'll get right into it. I don't fear the Bengals. I don't fear the Bengals. You're seeing the results the last 3 weeks, right? And we're into week 3. Anybody can beat anybody on any given Sunday. And
sure.
And I think that they're 0-2 and they're a good team, but we're treating them like they're, 3-time repeat Super Bowl champs, and it's impossible to compete with them. And I don't think that's the case.
Look, bottom line is you got to play who's in front of you. You got to play good teams, and you got to beat good teams if you want to be a good team in the NFL. You can't just beat up on the bad teams and then just, roll over when you get outmatched. And every single week, a team beats a team that we don't think they should have beaten. So why not us? If I'm Dan Quinn, that's what I'm preaching in the locker room right now. I'm saying, why not us? I'm saying Jacoby Brissett beat these guys week 1. They lost last week. You can look at it on one end of, okay, the Bengals need one, and this could be a get-right game for them, and they're going to be extra fired up. Or you could look at it the other end, going, clearly, something's not clicking for this team right now. Let's go kick them in the mouth while we have the chance to.
I think it's on us more than it's on them, quite frankly. I think there's a recipe to be followed, and we're going to get into it with our keys of the game, where we can be super competitive in this game. And I think it's more us executing that recipe and being able to respond. Like, I think Jane Daniels at one point had said, sometimes teams throw different things at you than you expect, and you got to be able to respond to that.
Yeah.
And how about Jaden going into his 3rd week in prime time against his fellow LSU Tiger, Joe Burrow? That's exciting, and it's exciting to watch his team continue to progress and improve.
Yeah, the LSU thing's going pretty crazy. We've got Burrow, Jamar Chase, and Jaden Daniels, all from LSU, all going to be on that field together Monday night. And then apparently, I guess Paul Skeens is pitching in Cincinnati as well today, probably as we're recording this, LSU kid. So LSU, all their superstars are in Cincinnati right now. Pretty
well,
wild.
Let's hope two of those three Tigers that are playing tomorrow night are sad.
Yeah.
After the game.
Well, let's hope it's Burrow and
two
Chase,
of the three. Only way for two of the three to be sad is if we win. Little math.
Well, I think Jamar Chase is going to be sad no matter what because he's waiting on that contract. But anyways,
Maybe.
let's talk X's and O's, man. I think some of the biggest headlines, probably the biggest headline of this week so far is the talk around Terry McLaurin. And it's so wild nowadays how I feel like the fan base, we almost like set the narrative in a way. You know, like we're talking about it, there's rumblings, you see some tweets going around, and then all of a sudden the reporters are now asking the coaches about these kinds of things, and the coaches are almost forced to address these conversations. Obviously, Terry is a conversation that needed to be had because he's just not off to a good start this year at all, off to a very slow start. You can contribute some of that to Kingsbury's offense. You can contribute some of that to Jaden Daniels kind of getting going. But Kingsbury had a great quote. He said, "We have to find a way to get Terry McLaurin more involved. That's on me completely. He's a tremendous player, one of the best players in the league, and I got to find ways to get him the football, and I expect to improve, and I'll do a better job of doing that. I expect that to improve, and I'll do a better job of doing that." So pretty strong, direct words from Kingsbury. I really like Kingsbury in the pressers. Just kind of gives up there, shoots it straight, sits back down. You can tell, in my opinion, now if all things go right, maybe this changes, but I don't think that's a head coach. I think that's just an offensive mastermind, Cliff Kingsbury. And I think that's where he's most comfortable. You can tell this is kind of the role he likes. He wants to just go dive into film and be a nerd at offense and come back out and, you know, be top 5 in just about every offensive efficiency category across the NFL. So I'm happy with that quote. I would love to see Terry get more involved. I think we're going to have to see Terry get more involved. We'll get into the Bengals scouting report as to why I'm a little bit concerned about that this week in particular. But how do you feel about that, Pop?
No, and I think, you know, if you mentioned them asking Kingsbury questions, but I think that was a comment that he made almost in his opening statement. So I think he beat the reporters to the punch. And he didn't have to say that, especially what he thinks of Terry as a receiver, right? I mean, he doesn't have to say that. And I think you hear all kinds of different things buzzing around Terry. Is it that he's just not as good as we think he is? And I think clearly Cliff Kingsbury thinks differently, thinks he's every bit as good as we think he is. It's just not getting him the ball. And there's some indication in some of the people that are watching the All-22s that he is open, and for various reasons, he's just not getting the ball. And you know, I think that's, you know, Jaden trying to be quick with it. And I also think, you know, look, Jaden's developing. You know, and we talked about it for a portion of that game last week. He really wasn't seeing it, and then something just started to click. But also, I think he, you know, and this is a positive, I think he really wants to protect the ball. So he's quick to take off and run before getting hit, or, you know, he's not wanting to maybe give his receivers a chance as much as maybe he should be. But I think that'll come. I think it'll come.
Sure. Yeah, I think overall, like, I don't think this is a week 2 conversation. I think this is like a week 6 or 7 conversation. You know, I think if we get to like mid-October, late October, and Terry's still pretty much a non-factor, then you start going, okay, why? Like, what's going on? And then the trade deadline starts to approach, and you just start thinking, right? But I think right now, I'm not so worried about it. I think, like you said, I think Jaden has a tendency to get overly conservative when he's uncomfortable, right? And I think that what that's going to mean is if there's a screenplay and you have McLaurin on a slant, like I saw a few plays last week where there was kind of like a bunch on the left side of the field and the screen's going to the bunch, and then McLaurin is out wide one-on-one, and McLaurin takes 2 steps, cuts up field, and he's wide open. But Jaden is not even looking at the one-on-one because the play call is the screen, right? Or the play call is the quick out or whatever. So I think those are things that will come. Those are the things that as he gets more comfortable, as he's less nervous, as the game slows down for him, which I think it is slowing down at an exponential rate for Jaden. I mean, you see guys around the league, it's just starting to slow down for Justin Fields. He's in his 4th year. It's just starting to slow down for Sam Darnold. He's 28. Like, it takes these guys time. So I'm not ready to raise alarms about it yet. And I know as the podcast's Terry skeptic, I think it's a strong word to say I'm a skeptic, but out of the two of us, the guy who's been more critical, I think that speaks a little bit more. I'm not even ready to panic yet.
Well, look, and even for me, right? I mean, clearly, I've been around a lot longer than you, and I go back to the days of my first favorite
wide receiver, a day over 29,
was Charlie Taylor. I don't even know if you know that name. I'm sure you probably do from hearing me talk about it. But that's pre-Art Monk, right? I mean, I think that's the first Redskin jersey that I had, and he was Hall of Famer, great receiver. I think he was the all-time reception leader when he retired. Of course, they caught the ball a lot less back then. And, for me, Terry is one of my all-time great favorite Redskins / Commanders. I love Terry McLaurin, and I think he's underrated as a player, if anything. But having said that, as long as we're moving the ball, which we've been moving the ball, I want Terry to get the ball as much as anybody else, but it's not the most important thing to me. It's that we're moving the ball and the offensive is moving, and I think Kingsbury is calling it brilliantly. It's building on Jaden. It's putting him in positions to be successful. It's letting him use his legs for right now while he's, getting that, like you said, while the game slows down, right? And he starts to adapt. And I think it's brilliant. And hopefully we'll see a breakout game from Terry soon, but I don't think it's the most important thing right now.
Yeah.
And I don't think he's going anywhere either.
And it's just not, this team right now is not built to force feed a wide receiver, 18 targets a game with the way this defense is set up and with the rookie quarterback. It's just not. If you look at these guys, if you look at the guys that have had these historically crazy numbers, a lot of them, the Justin Jefferson season, okay, that was with Kirk Cousins. The Matt Stafford, Cooper Kupp season, that was with Stafford. A lot of it takes a veteran quarterback to be able to just force feed targets to a guy like that. And for me, we play for the name on the front of the jersey and not the back. I'm way more worried about developing number 5, solidifying a franchise quarterback. And if that means that we got to throw screens and stay at the line of scrimmage for the next 10 weeks, 12 weeks, and we win 7-8 games, we win 9 games, which I think maybe not 9, but I think 10's enough to win the division this year. I think I'm more than happy with that. And at the end of the day, McLaurin's a guy that will be here for the foreseeable future. But if things go the way you want them to go with Daniels, he's not going to be here the entire time of this team being successful. You want to have Daniels around for the next 10, 15 years, right? So he's going to have to get it done with guys other than McLaurin. So that's my.
Speaking of things we should be more worried about, the defense, right?
Yeah,
and we did hear from Joe Witt. We did hear from Joe Witt Jr. about defensive line in particular, and John Allen and Daron Payne. And he said, he was pretty direct. He said I would evaluate them about like the rest of us. As a defense, we're not where we need to be. And, as much as a little bit of excuse making that's been made for, Daron and John in terms of, in our last pod, we talked about it, getting double teamed and all of that. We got to start seeing them flash a bit more and perform a little better. And I think it was interesting that Joe Witt Jr. was pretty direct in saying that was the case. And I think that's a more important key than anything's going on offense. We got to get more production out of our defensive line and our defense as a whole.
Yeah, it's the defensive line overall for me because if you watch the tape, I watched there was a great, I think Nikki Javala uploaded it. It was like a clip of like every snap that Payne and Allen were on the field together for against the Giants. And I mean, they were throwing 4 guys at him most of the time. They were throwing 3 guys in a chip.
Tough.
Like they were going to, but if that's the case, that means you should have a free runner or you should have some one-on-ones on the outside pretty frequently. And we got to win those.
Yeah,
we
they're eating up blocks, right?
We have to win those. There's just there's no excuse for that. And we saw that's when the defensive line was at its best, was when Payne, Allen, and Montez Sweat were all cooking together. And we don't have that presence on the edge yet. So we're going to be missing Farrell on Monday, which sucks. But maybe it's an opportunity for a guy like Jamin Davis. Maybe it's an opportunity for a guy like Javonte Jean-Baptiste. Maybe it's an opportunity for Armstrong to finally start making a play. Who's the other guy? Fowler. Dante Fowler has not really had his name called at all this year. See if he can start making a play. We have to get that worked out. We have to get the pass rush worked out. I think that's as if not more important than the issues in the secondary. But Pop,
Dorrance Armstrong, I think. Did you mention? Yeah, he's another one. Yeah, I think he's. I mean, I like Cleveland as much as anyone else, but I think he's one of many guys. And you're right. We're waiting for who's going to step up, and it'll give these other guys. He's been
the best so far, but not good enough.
Yeah, for sure. Sure, not perfectly said.
Yeah.
Let's get a little scouting report. Let's do it.
You guys know the big names. You know the Cincinnati Bengals. This is the Cincinnati Bengals. This is a
on NFL Cincinnati. We didn't say that yet.
Yeah. Oh, that's crazy. Here we are on to Cincinnati. This is an NFL tier 1, A market franchise at this point in time. Crazy to say because growing up, the Bengals were always terrible, but that's what a guy like Joe Burrow will do for your franchise. And I really think, honestly, I think this begins and ends with Joe Burrow on the scouting report side of things. And we'll talk about it when we get into the keys. But when Burrow's on, Burrow can beat literally anybody or anything in his way. So that's the most important piece there is Joe Burrow, of course. And right next to Joe Burrow, the second most important piece there would be Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase, stud wide receiver. You're going to see T. Higgins is going to be back as another stud wide receiver. He'll be back on Monday night, maybe on a little bit of a pitch count, maybe more situational stuff, but he'll be back. I don't know how you match up with the two of those guys defensively. And then you've got on the defense, I mean, they've got Trey Hendrickson, who's like a Max Crosby type. He's just an absolute workhorse of a defensive end, just a complete animal. He's got a motor. He's great in the run. He's great in the pass. He's just a dog. He's probably not talked about enough across the league. I think this is a guy with, top 6 or 7 talent. Maybe even a top 5 guy you could make an argument for easily. I think Cam Taylor-Britt at defensive back is another great player that they have. You saw the interception he made against Kansas City, just a big addition there to what is otherwise a pretty modest secondary in Cincinnati. I think they're great on the edges. I think their offensive line is really good. They don't have Joe Mixon this year at running back. They've got Zach Moss and they've got Chase Brown, who are kind of a nice little 1-2. It's the same idea as Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler, but they're not as good. It's the same, like Chase Brown's more of a pass catcher, Zach Moss more of the bruiser. I think the weakness of this team is going to be the interior of their defensive line. They're going to have like third stringers and practice squatters playing there. So that is where this matchup gets really interesting. And when we get into the keys, that is where this gets really interesting because that is where the strength of the Commanders line is. And that's where most of the Commanders offense is wreaking havoc right now, is up the middle of that field via Brian Robinson Jr. So that's where things start to get a little bit interesting. But I think if you want to say, hey, their defensive tackles are bad and we have a good running back, you can just as easily say, well, our cornerbacks are bad and they have a top 3 receiver in football. So
That's fair. Fantastic job.
That's my scouting report.
This kid's a pro.
I like the Bengals. I find myself, if the Bengals are on and playing a team I don't care about, I find myself rooting for the Bengals. Usually, I like this.
You got a little Joe Burrow man crush.
I like Burrow a lot. It's a good team. I think about the people of Cincinnati suffered the way I suffered growing up, and I'm happy for them that they got a squad there.
Can I ask you a scouting report question? Put you on the spot a little bit.
Please.
Where's Joe Burrow at in terms of his mobility? I know he can scoot around a little bit, but my impressions are for the most part, he's in the pocket, right?
Yeah, but he can do what he needs to
escape.
do. I mean, he had a couple first down scrambles last week. It's what he does. He's just if you don't he's kind of just good enough that if you don't watch out for him, he'll make you pay for it. I would put him kind of like in that Baker. He's probably a little more mobile than Baker is, but like in that type of category, almost like a Justin Herbert. Like he'll get outside the pocket, he'll hurt you with his legs for sure, and he's fully healthy. Burrow's fully healthy, so this is the first time they've been 0-2 with Burrow.
I don't know. He looked a little shaky grabbing that Gatorade bottle the other week.
And he looked just fine throwing the football, which is his job. So, I mean, how many times you pick up a wet Gatorade bottle do you slip a little bit? It could not have been a more ridiculous clip online. But anyways. I think we should get into the 3 keys.
Let's do it.
And I think number 1, we've already talked about a little bit. Number 1, very simple. Run the damn ball. We're going to have to run the ball. We're going to have to control time of possession. That's number 1.
You said it's strength against weakness, right? It seems like their interior line is beat up. They've been run on pretty good the first couple of games. I think we got to run the ball, and I think we will. I think that's going to be a big part of our game. Probably an adjacent key to that is not fall behind early, right?
I think
in order to be able to run the ball, you've got to you got to be in the game. You got to be within 1 score, early, right?
100%. I think if you win this game, it looks something along the lines of Brian Robinson had 25 carries. I think that's how this game gets won. I think that's the only way. I think it's going to have to be, it's going to have to be like a David Montgomery-esque.
Can we feed a couple of those to Eck? Just a couple?
Right. Sure. But I want Brian Robinson to have like a San Francisco 49ers stat line by the end of this. Like I just want him pounding that football. That's the only way, I think. I think that's the number 1 key. That's why we got it at number 1. Number 2, we got to get D-line play. We got to generate pressure. That's huge because the other way this thing could go is maybe we fall into a shootout. And if we fall into a shootout, we've got to affect Burrow. I don't think you win a shootout against a team like this, but if we get there, you've got to affect Burrow. You've got to make it hard for him. The Bengals play kind of slow in general, so you've got to, the possessions that they have, you have to try and get stops. I think I would add to this second one, bend, don't break. Field goals against this team, I'm happy with. I'm happy with the 25-yard field goal. I'm happy with the 38-yard field goal, whatever it is. You got to try and limit the scoring in the red zone, particularly with this team. And D-line play, I think, is going to be our way there because I think the secondary, they just are who they are. But we might have to scheme up.
I think you want Joe Burrow to be aware that you're there. I mean, he's had his share of dings and injuries, and I think if you could just put some hits on him, make him know you're there, make him feel it a little bit. I know he's Joe Cool and he handles pressure really well, but I think that's going to be important for sure. And we know the secondary is going to struggle to cover guys, and yes, they're going to get beat. Don't freak out. But we got to get some stops. Got to get them off the field, 3rd and long.
Yep,
that's a big part of it, right? That's where we've struggled.
Yep. And number 3, we've already said it. You got to try. I mean, I don't know how successful they'll be, but if they can contain Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, you got a shot at this thing. I mean, I don't know. Crazier things have happened, right? But you got to just try to limit. I look back to the game that Benjamin St. Juste had against Justin Jefferson a couple years ago when Jefferson was on in Minnesota, and we lost because Ridgeway jumped on the long snapper. Remember that game? Played Minnesota really well, played them really tough. They were much better than us. People in the comments will remember. And, I mean,
your memory's a lot better than mine.
Jefferson still had like 115 yards and a touchdown. But for that year, that was actually a down game for him. You weren't letting him beat you over the top. You were kind of making him beat you everything underneath. I think that's the path forward here. I think you have to just keep these guys in front of you, make Cincinnati run a lot of plays, keep these receivers from beating you over the top. That's my best way to contain them, is to just not let them get above you. Play too high, let them run the ball, but don't let these guys get behind you, because they'll kill us.
Yeah, it's the scary part of the game. I don't have a lot of great wisdom to add here, other than, it is tough because Benjamin St. Juste did play well last week, but you need more than one guy covering.
Yeah,
for sure. And we seem to struggle beyond that one guy. I would just add here, as a key is, like we talked about our success moving the ball. We do need to finish more, of course.
Yep.
We can't kick all field goals this time around. So that's maybe an obvious one, but I think I'm excited for the game to wrap this part up for me, and let's hope it's we're turning the page on it going into Monday Night Football and just getting wiped out and embarrassing ourselves. Let's hope it's at least a competitive game, and maybe we'll pick it here in a couple of minutes.
Yep, and let's get into that. It is time for the Monday Night Football Bada Bets special. And we're going to talk a little around the league as well, but it's time to get into the Bada Bets for Monday night. So, Commanders at Bengals. Bengals are 7.5 point favorites. Now, before this weekend, I don't remember, I didn't check today, but before today, through the first 2 weeks of the season, every single team that was an underdog by more than a touchdown actually won the game outright. So I don't know how that lined up today, but
that's a crazy stat.
Keep that in mind. Pretty wild. I think that goes into the category of there's only been 2 weeks of NFL football so far. So it's just this fluky stuff that happens earlier in the year. It's like when Sam Darnold was the leading rushing touchdown quarterback through like 3 weeks a couple of years ago. These things just aren't real. But Bengals 7.5 point favorites at home. Pop, I think we're both picking a Bengals win here if we had to. I think we both did in the season-long predictions. But what do you think? Do we cover this?
Yeah, this pick's against the spread. And I think, I'm not going to give up 7.5 points. At this point, I'm going to say that our boys are going to play a close one. I would say, if I had to predict, I'd say it's going to be close, but
sure.
A loss.
Yeah.
You never know. It's hard to stretch, but hopefully we can keep it competitive. I think this team's got a lot of pride. I think Jaden, in and of himself, it's going to mean a lot to him. And they're going to play hard for Jaden, in that Tiger showdown. Hey, you never know. I mean, it could be one of those weeks where we really get humbled. We kind of already went through that in week 1.
Sure.
So I don't know that we need to go through that again, but I'll take our boys in the points.
Yeah, I'm going to go for the points as well here. I think it's I'll take the Commanders. It's a lot of points. You hope it's closer than this. I see a lot of outcomes where it's not, but
of course,
you take the Commanders. Why not?
I think you look at it, right, and you look at Pats beat them. Yeah, the Chiefs are the Chiefs, but that was a close game. They've been in close games first 2 weeks, right? So
yeah, and you can make the argument that the Bengals aren't really the team that blow teams out. They win, but they don't usually. They always kind of make you sweat a little bit, a la some other AFC North teams today.
I think it'll come down to us not beating ourselves, right? Not having those critical errors, those untimely penalties. We're gonna have to play better than we did last week to make this prediction come through. I think
we're gonna have to play.
I think we're a team that's on the ascend. I mean, and portions of it, right? If we run the ball as effectively as we did last week, perfect. Right?
Sure.
If we move the ball as effectively as we did last week, perfect. If we continue to just self-destruct in the red zone, which is going to be even a bigger challenge in Cincinnati versus a home game.
So,
so we've got to be better in those areas for sure.
If we can get more than 400, if we get, again, over 400 yards of total offense and it's not in garbage time, you got to be competitive. I think, I don't know what the stats are on that, but I would assume most of the time when you got that much offense, it's at least within a touchdown. If not, you just went out right.
No doubt.
We could do that again. I mean, these guys are not the New York Giants. That's the bottom line. So this is a real, opportunity. And it's certainly, as a former coach that shall not be named, it's certainly it's a measuring stick game, as he would say. And generally, measuring stick games mean we lose by 40. But let's hope it doesn't go that way. So we're both taking the Commanders. We're being homers here. Why not? Since you're taking it, I'll take it. Jaguars at Bills. Bills are 5.5-point favorites. They kick off. They got the early game tomorrow. So what do you think, Pop?
I like the Bills all day in this one. I mean,
same.
Probably get burned, but Jags aren't playing all that well. Bills are rolling. They're at home. The vibe just feels like they're going to win this one by well over 5.5 points, in my opinion.
I agree. I think Josh Allen has been hearing the chatter. That's what it looks like this season. It looks like Josh Allen has been hearing all this Lamar Jackson talk and all this Joe Burrow talk. And Josh Allen wants to remind everybody who their daddy is and who was the former best quarterback other than Mahomes. So I think Josh Allen is out for blood this year.
Oh, that's funny. And it's something just doesn't seem completely right with the Jags, right?
Jags are falling apart at the seams. It ain't something. That looks like a disaster down there.
Yeah. And going to Buffalo, that's a hard place for anybody to go. Any team in the league to go play and win, right?
Yeah, let alone Monday night. I mean, these guys have been drinking all day. They're going to
be juiced.
Oh, my God.
They're going to be feeling loose.
Oh, my God. So that's that one. Then let's go around the league a little bit. Let's talk a little bit of the football today. Eagles squeaked by the Saints. That was a hell of a game. Really, really good game. Giants won as well.
I told you the Giants are better than people think.
Well, I think the Browns are worse than people think.
You could say that.
I think it's a little bit of that. But the Giants won. I think Daniel Jones, all of a sudden now, you give him a guy like Malik Neighbors, and the best thing that could happen is for Malik Neighbors to get Daniel Jones another contract extension. Can we make that happen up in New York? Can we make that happen?
Daniel Jones is just one of those guys where he looks the part, right? And at times, and every time he plays Washington, he's got all the tools to be a really good player. He just doesn't put it all together.
He just I think in a lot of other programs, he would have already been on the bench and maybe out of the league at this point. But he just, for some reason, they've been very patient with him in New York. And he's just good enough that they don't want to look the other way. But always, just by this much. I still think they should look the other way. But who knows, man? Who knows what's going on in New York? But New York gets their first win. Cowboys lose to the Ravens. That was a squeaker. I thought the Cowboys were going to come back and win that game. But
it wasn't really a squeaker. I mean, the Ravens, were well in control.
Ravens tried to blow it.
Cowboys made it interesting. They tried to blow it.
They did what they do, man.
Thank goodness they didn't, because I'd be seriously worried about the insider.
We might be doing this.
This was a code red situation.
Yeah, it might have to be like an in-house visit for the insider. I might have to get on the plane.
I looked up. And I saw the score, and I saw the Cowboys driving, because I kind of at halftime started losing interest a little bit.
Yeah.
Since it was such a separation. So I turned on Red Zone and was kind of paying attention. Rams had a really cool comeback, and you thought maybe the Cowboys were going to do the same thing. But I was happy in the end that, you did call me crazy for picking the Eagles. I just seem to remember that.
They clutched it up. I'll give you that.
Evidence.
You want to talk about the Vikings?
The Vikings are for real, it looks like.
Is it time for a little bit of flowers on the Kevin O'Connell talk?
Yeah, I told you. If they have a great year this year, I give it to you. So far, they might
3
be the
games
best
in football.
But yeah, they had that could end up being a really interesting quarterback situation in Minnesota. Yeah,
because, man, Darnold's still young. Darnold's very young.
Yeah.
It's not like Darnold's 34,
Yeah.
Speaking of 34, how about Andy Dalton today? Andy Dalton had 3 touchdowns, threw for 340 yards.
And that's the crazy thing about the NFL, right? Who had the Raiders going into Baltimore and beating the Ravens, right? It knocked me out of my survivor pool. And But yeah, and then who had, the Carolina just crushing the Raiders the next week.
Yeah.
It's just wild. It's wild. It's what makes us love it.
You guys will know tomorrow whether or not Kansas City joins this crew. But the Steelers, the Seahawks, and the Vikings have all ascended to 3-0. Speaking of quarterback situations, I think we know how this one's going to play out. And I'm so happy about this. Justin Fields, Pittsburgh, you've got your quarterback.
How are Chicago fans feeling?
You've got your guy. I don't care. I'm happy for Justin Fields. Because it's a guy that he was a victim of a really terrible circumstance there in Chicago. It's a situation where this lame duck coach, the offensive coordinator switching around, just a disaster. And he gets to a stable situation, and it's unbelievable how much you see these guys change when they get into a real situation. And you see, he didn't win the starting job. He was behind Russ. Russ ends up getting hurt. I don't know what happened there, but Russ ends up with a little bit of an injury, and all of a sudden Fields takes the opportunity. He looked really good today. I can
speak from personal experience. As you get older, those calf strains are a pain in the ass.
Yeah, no fun.
I'm dealing with one right now. So
you've been dealing with one for 10 years.
Decades.
But it's Justin Fields, I'm real happy to see him get there. Obviously, I think the Chargers might have won that game if Herbert didn't get hurt. But, as we know here in Washington, when Taylor Heineke comes into the game, there's only so much a squad can do. But that was the problem with that situation was I'm a Heineke fan and I'm a Herbert fan. So I'm like, damned if you do, damned if you don't. If Heineke comes in and cooks, Herbert's not that good. If he comes in and doesn't play well, Herbert's good. Anyways,
if we're having a Heineke versus Herbert conversation, you need to seek medical attention quickly.
Put my boy Herbert down, man. But anyways, Seahawks as well look like a really good football team. Michael McDonald. You want to talk about Chicago? How's Baltimore feeling losing that guy? How is Baltimore feeling with Michael
early,
McDonald?
But the Hawks are rolling. But yeah, it's still early,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
We'll see. I mean, nobody would have had the Vikings, Steelers, and Seahawks 3-0. I don't even know that anyone would have said those are playoff teams before the season started. So, that 3-0 start can come back down to earth. Of those three teams, which one? I know who you're going to pick. Who do you think is most for real? Vikings.
It's close, but I almost go Steelers just because that's a good team and they've just been held back by such bad quarterback play. And I think Justin Fields' ceiling is really high. And I think if they did find the guy with Fields and he can continue to develop, I think you could look up and Pittsburgh won 12 games this year and you go, holy crap. Just because Tomlin, the defense there. But Minnesota, I mean, the only reason I can't say Minnesota is because I'm still wondering, if Sam Darnold will ever wake up from this fever dream and we'll see the Sam Darnold that we've seen in the past. But there's no reason for me to believe that that's going to happen at this point in time. Based off of the last 3 weeks alone and no prior feelings about players, it's got to be Minnesota, right?
You would think so, just based on the results. Yeah.
But anyways, let's wrap this thing up, Pop. It's been a good pod. Boys have gotten down to it. And shall we check in with you guys?
Is that still a thing? The left hand up thing?
It's always a thing, right?
Well, it'll be a thing for today.
Left hand up.
The boys represent tonight.
Yeah, let's do it, boys. Let's go get them. Guys, if you've been watching this long, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let us know what you think the boys need to do to get a win. Maybe you're watching this on Tuesday after the boys already got a win and you're going, man, Dom and Pop were dialed. They predicted that game exactly. I doubt it, but hopefully. Anyways, let's wrap this thing up. Without further ado, I've been Dom.
This is Pop.
Have a good week, everybody.